I never thought a simple "no trespassing" sign would lead to a 3-year legal battle that nearly cost me everything I had worked for. But when you live next to Lake Murray in South Carolina and own waterfront property, nothing is ever simple, especially when an overzealous HOA decides your land is the perfect place for their new community boat ramp. My name is Xavier Vance, and until 3 years ago, I was just another guy enjoying the quiet life along the shores of Lake Murray. I had purchased my 3-acre lakefront property back in 2018, a full year before the Osprey Cove development broke ground next door. The developer had tried to buy my land, but I wasn't selling. This was my retirement dream, a place where I could fish off my own dock, watch the sunrise over the water, and eventually build the home I'd been sketching in my mind for years. I wasn't wealthy by any means. I had saved for 20 years while working as an electrical engineer, living frugally and investing wisely. When I finally pulled the trigger on this piece of land, I felt like I had won the lottery. The property wasn't fancy, just a modest cabin, a small dock, and beautiful waterfront access with a natural cove that made for easy boat launching. I had plans to build something more permanent eventually, but for now, the cabin was perfect for weekend getaways from my apartment in Columbia. The trouble started in May of 2022. I had arrived at my cabin on a Friday evening, looking forward to a weekend of fishing and relaxation. As I turned down my gravel driveway, I noticed something strange: heavy equipment parked near the water's edge of my property. A small bulldozer, some concrete forms, and a pile of gravel sat where there should have been nothing but my untouched shoreline. I parked my truck and walked down to investigate, my heart hammering in my chest. Someone had clearly begun construction on my property. The worst part: they had already cleared about 30 feet of shoreline and graded a slope down to the water. As I stood there, trying to process what I was seeing, a white SUV with Osprey Cove HOA emblazoned on the side pulled up. Out stepped a woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a blue blazer despite the South Carolina heat, her blonde hair cut in that distinctive "can I speak to the manager" style that made my stomach clench. "Hello there," she called out with practiced cheerfulness. "I'm Tammy Larson, president of the Osprey Cove Homeowners Association. Are you with the construction crew?" I shook my head. "No, I'm Xavier Vance. I own this property." Her smile didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes. "Oh, well, it's nice to meet you, Mr. Vance. I was just checking on the progress of our community boat ramp." "Your what?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Our boat ramp. The HOA approved it last month. It's going to be such a wonderful amenity for our residents." She gestured to the cleared area. "The contractor said they'll have it finished within 2 weeks." "Madam," I said slowly, "this is my property. I don't know who told you that you could build here, but you can't. I never gave permission for this." Tammy's smile tightened. "There must be some misunderstanding. Our board has all the necessary approvals. We've been planning this for months." "Approvals from who?" "Not from me, and I'm the owner of this land." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling. "Let me just show you the site plans that were approved. According to our documentation, this parcel is part of the easement granted to Osprey Cove by the original landowner." "I am the original landowner," I said. "I bought this directly from Blue Ridge Development 4 years ago. There's no easement." Tammy looked genuinely confused now. "That can't be right," our developer assured us. I pulled out my wallet and handed her my card. "I suggest you stop all work immediately and have your developer contact me. This is trespassing and property damage." She took my card but didn't move to leave. "Mr. Vance, I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. The plans clearly show the plans are wrong." I cut her off. "I'm calling the sheriff if this equipment isn't gone by tomorrow morning." That should have been the end of it. A simple mistake, albeit an expensive one for whoever had approved the construction. But as I would soon learn, Tammy Larson didn't take well to being told no. The next morning, instead of finding the equipment removed, I discovered 3 more workers arriving with additional supplies. I immediately called the Lexington County Sheriff's Department. When Deputy Rodriguez arrived about 40 minutes later, Tammy was already there, armed with a stack of papers. "Officer, I have all the documentation right here," she said before the deputy could even ask what was going on. "Our association has proper approval for this construction." Deputy Rodriguez turned to me. "Sir, what's your side of this?" I explained the situation and showed him my property deed and survey, which clearly showed that I owned this land free and clear with no easements. The deputy looked over both sets of documents, then shook his head. "Madam, his deed and survey are pretty clear. Do you have something showing an easement or permission from Mr. Vance?" Tammy shuffled through her papers. "We have approval from Blue Ridge Development. They assured us this area was designated for community use. Blue Ridge sold this property to me 4 years ago," I explained. "Whatever they told you, they didn't have the right to grant permission for construction here." The deputy nodded. "Madam, I'm going to have to ask your workers to stop construction and remove their equipment. This appears to be private property, and without clear permission from the owner, this constitutes trespassing." I expected that to settle things, but Tammy wasn't giving up. "This is outrageous. We've already invested thousands of dollars in this project. Our residents were promised water access." "That's not my problem," I said. "Your developer made promises about property they didn't own." The deputy instructed the workers to pack up, and they begrudgingly complied. Tammy stormed off to her SUV, but not before turning to me with a cold stare. "This isn't over, Mr. Vance. The board will be discussing this matter further." I didn't know it then, but those words were the beginning of a nightmare. Over the next week, I received multiple calls from Marcus Reed, the developer of Osprey Cove. He started with apologies, claiming there had been a misunderstanding about the property lines. But his tone quickly changed when I refused to grant an easement for their boat ramp. "Mr. Vance, we're prepared to make this worth your while," he said during our third call. "We can offer you $10,000 for a simple easement. It won't affect your enjoyment of the property at all." "Except for the constant traffic of boats and people using my shoreline," I replied. "No thanks." $15,000 then. That's more than fair for a small piece of land you're not even using." "It's not about the money," I told him. "I bought this property for privacy and my own water access. I'm not interested in turning it into a community boat launch." The calls stopped after that, and I thought perhaps they'd finally accepted my decision. I was wrong. 2 weeks later, I arrived at my cabin to find construction had resumed and progressed significantly. In just a few days, they had poured a concrete boat ramp that extended from the cleared area down into the water. A small parking area had been graveled, and they were in the process of installing posts for what looked like a gate. I was livid. I called the sheriff's department again, but this time Tammy was ready. When Deputy Miller, a different officer than before, arrived, she presented him with a court order. "This is a temporary construction easement granted by Judge Williams," she explained smugly. "It allows us to complete the boat ramp pending resolution of our case." I took the document and read it in disbelief. Somehow, the Osprey Cove HOA had gone to court without notifying me and convinced a judge to grant them temporary access to my property. "How is this possible?" I asked the deputy. "I was never notified of any court hearing." Deputy Miller looked uncomfortable. "Sir, I can't speak to the legal process, but this appears to be a valid court order. My hands are tied." I immediately called a lawyer, Trevor Bennett, who specialized in property disputes. He reviewed the court order and explained that the HOA had filed an emergency petition claiming they had a pre-existing easement that I was interfering with, causing immediate harm to their property values. "They claimed you bought the property with knowledge of this easement," Trevor explained. Judge Williams granted a temporary order to maintain the status quo until a full hearing. It's unusual but not unheard of in development disputes. "But there is no easement," I protested, "and I was never notified of any hearing." "They claimed they attempted service at your Columbia address, but were unsuccessful." Judge Williams gave them the benefit of the doubt since this was just a temporary order pending a full hearing. Trevor advised me that we needed to file an emergency motion to dissolve the temporary order, but the earliest we could get before the judge would be the following week. In the meantime, the construction continued. By the time we got our hearing, the boat ramp was nearly complete. Judge Williams, a stern older man with a reputation for favoring development, listened to both sides but ultimately extended the temporary order. The court recognizes the substantial investment already made by the Homeowners Association, he said. Until we can hold a full evidentiary hearing, the temporary easement will remain in place to prevent economic waste. Outside the courtroom, Tammy approached me with another offer. $25,000 for a permanent easement, Mr. Vance. That's our final offer. I declined again, even though Trevor warned me that fighting this would be expensive and time-consuming. They're betting you'll give up, he said. They have the resources of an entire community behind them. You're just one person. It's the principle, I insisted. They can't just take my land because they want it. Over the next month, the boat ramp was completed, a beautiful concrete launch with a small floating dock alongside it. The HOA installed a gate across the entrance with a keypad lock, and residents of Osprey Cove began using it regularly. Every weekend, I would watch from my cabin as a stream of boats and jet skis launched from what used to be my peaceful shoreline. The full hearing kept getting delayed, first because the court calendar was full, then because the HOA's lawyer had a scheduling conflict, and finally because Judge Williams had a medical issue. Months passed, and the temporary order remained in place. During this time, I got to know some of the Osprey Cove residents. Not all of them supported what their HOA was doing. One neighbor, Mike Daniels, even apologized to me one day as he was launching his boat. Most of us had no idea this was your land, he admitted. They told us it was always planned as community access. I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Mike introduced me to other residents who felt the same way. They'd been told that I was an unreasonable holdout trying to block access that had been promised to them when they purchased their homes. The reality that their developer and HOA had essentially stolen my property was a shock to many of them. As winter approached and boat traffic dwindled, I had an idea. The temporary order specified that the HOA had the right to complete and use the boat ramp, but it didn't address who controlled access to it. Legally, it was still my property, they just had an easement to use it. I consulted with Trevor, who reviewed the court order carefully. The order doesn't specify that you have to provide unlimited access, he confirmed. It just says you can't interfere with their use of the boat ramp itself. So if I installed my own gate across my driveway before you even reach their gate, Trevor nodded slowly. That would be on your property, outside the easement area. Legally, I don't see how they could stop you. That weekend, I hired a contractor to install a heavy-duty gate across my driveway about 50 yards from where the HOA's gate stood. I had it fitted with my own digital lock and security cameras. When it was finished, I posted new signs. Private property authorized access only. The reaction was immediate. The first Saturday after installation, a line of cars with boats in tow arrived at my new gate, only to find it locked. Tammy was there within the hour, pounding on my cabin door. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded when I answered. "You're in violation of the court order." I handed her a printed copy of the order. "Please show me where it says I have to provide free access across my entire property." "The easement is for the boat ramp area only, not my driveway." Her face turned an impressive shade of red. "This is obstruction. Our residents have the right to use that boat ramp, and they still can," I replied calmly, "for a reasonable access fee of $20 per use. I've set up a payment system online where they can register and receive the gate code." "That's extortion." "No, it's a standard access fee. Many private boat ramps charge similar amounts. The court said you could use the ramp, it didn't say I had to let you use it for free." Tammy stormed off, and I received a call from the HOA's lawyer that afternoon. He threatened further legal action, but when I had Trevor speak with him, he backed down somewhat. The temporary order really didn't address access across the rest of my property. That evening, I launched my website, Lake Murray Boat Access.com. For $20 per day or $200 for a season pass, boaters could register, pay online, and receive a code for my gate. I made sure to note that this was private property and that the fees were for maintenance and security of the access road. To my surprise, several Osprey Cove residents immediately signed up. While some were furious about the fee, others thought it was reasonable compared to public launch fees in the area. By Sunday evening, I had collected over $300 in daily passes. Tammy and the HOA board were livid. On Monday, they filed an emergency motion claiming I was in contempt of the court order. We appeared before Judge Williams again later that week. "Your Honor," the HOA's attorney argued, "Mr. Vance is clearly trying to circumvent your order by charging exorbitant fees for access to the boat ramp you authorized." Trevor countered, "The order grants an easement specifically for the boat ramp area, not for Mr. Vance's entire property. He's simply controlling access to his private land and charging a reasonable fee for its use, something property owners do throughout the lake region." Judge Williams seemed irritated with both parties. "This case has dragged on long enough," he said. The temporary order was not intended to grant unlimited rights to the Homeowners Association, while depriving Mr. Vance of all control over his property. In a surprising turn, the judge modified his order. The HOA may continue to use the boat ramp, but Mr. Vance has the right to charge a reasonable access fee not to exceed market rates for similar facilities in the area. Additionally, I am setting a firm trial date for next month to resolve this matter permanently. Tammy looked stunned. This was the first time the court hadn't simply given the HOA what they wanted. As we left the courtroom, I could hear her furiously whispering to her attorney. Over the next few weeks, my access system worked smoothly. Most Osprey Cove residents grudgingly paid the fee, though some tried to tailgate through the gate behind paying members, which is why I'd installed cameras. I made sure the road was well maintained and even hired someone to keep the launch area clean on busy weekends. The trial date approached, and Trevor and I prepared our case meticulously. We had property surveys, my original deed, witness testimonies from residents who had been misled by the developer, and evidence of the HOA's dishonesty in their emergency petition. 3 days before the trial was set to begin, I received a call from Trevor. "Xavier, they want to settle." "What are they offering?" I asked, suspicious after everything they'd put me through. "They'll pay you $50,000 for a permanent easement, plus all your legal fees to date." I considered it for a moment. The offer was substantial, more than double their previous one, but after a year of fighting, it didn't feel like enough. "Tell them no," I decided, "but I have a counter-offer." My proposal was straightforward. I would grant a formal easement for the boat ramp, but with specific conditions. The HOA would pay me $100,000 for the easement, plus all legal fees. I would maintain control of the access gate and continue charging reasonable fees, but 25% of those fees would go to the HOA for ramp maintenance. Most importantly, the HOA would publicly acknowledge their wrongdoing and apologize to both me and their residents for the deception. "They'll never agree to the public apology," Trevor warned. "Then we go to trial," I replied. "I'm tired of being portrayed as the villain in this story." To my surprise, after 2 days of negotiation, they accepted most of my terms. They agreed to the $100,000 payment, the fee-sharing arrangement, and reimbursement of my legal expenses. Instead of a public apology, they would issue a clarification to residents about the history of the boat ramp. I was prepared to go to trial on principle, but Trevor convinced me this was a win. "You're getting everything of substance," he argued. "The money, the control, and an implicit admission they were wrong. That's more than most people get in these disputes. We finalized the settlement the day before trial. As part of the agreement, I installed a new gate system that allowed both my control and HOA administration. Residents could purchase either daily passes or annual memberships, with the proceeds split between me and the HOA's maintenance fund. The clarification the HOA sent out was carefully worded but clear enough. The boat ramp was constructed under a misunderstanding regarding property boundaries. We have reached an amicable agreement with the property owner, Mr. Vance, to ensure continued access for our residents. Not exactly the full-throated apology I'd wanted, but it was something. More satisfying was watching Tammy Larson announce at the next HOA meeting that she was stepping down as president. The boat ramp fiasco had damaged her standing in the community, especially when residents learned how much of their HOA dues had gone to legal fees. The new HOA president, ironically enough, was Mike Daniels, the neighbor who had first apologized to me months earlier. Under his leadership, relations between Osprey Cove and me improved dramatically. We established clear rules for the boat ramp, including hours of operation and noise restrictions. With the settlement money, I was finally able to break ground on my dream house. I positioned it farther back from the water, away from the boat traffic, with a screened porch overlooking a different part of the shoreline. The fees from the boat ramp, which averaged about $15,000 a year, became a nice supplement to my retirement income. 2 years have passed since the settlement. The boat ramp operates smoothly now, and I've even made friends with many of the Osprey Cove residents. Some still resent the access fees, but most understand it's a fair arrangement given how the ramp came to be. Tammy Larson sold her house and moved away last year. I heard through the grapevine that she's now battling with a different HOA in Charleston over her non-regulation mailbox. Some people never learn. As for me, I've learned valuable lessons about property rights, standing your ground, and the importance of good legal counsel. I've also learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting everything you want, it's finding a compromise that still leaves you ahead while making your adversaries acknowledge they were wrong. Last summer, the HOA held their annual picnic on the community green near the boat ramp. Mike Daniels surprised me by asking if I'd like to attend. "You're practically part of the community now," he said. I went, expecting some cold shoulders, but instead found myself welcomed by most residents. One elderly gentleman even pulled me aside and whispered, "Good for you for standing up to Tammy. That woman tried to fine me for having my grandkids' bikes visible in my garage." The most satisfying moment came when I overheard 2 residents discussing the boat ramp while waiting in line for the grill. $20 is actually pretty reasonable compared to the state park launch, one said. "And this one's never crowded," the other replied. "Worth every penny." I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes justice comes in unexpected forms. This spring, I finally completed my house, a beautiful timber frame design with large windows overlooking the lake. From my deck, I can see the boat ramp in the distance, now integrated so naturally into the landscape that you'd never know it was built without permission. I've installed a small honor box at the gate for emergency access in case someone has trouble with the digital system. It rarely gets used, but I like having it there as a gesture of goodwill. I've also started offering free access on major holidays as a neighborly courtesy. Last month, the county assessed my property value at nearly double what it was before this all started. Between my new home, the boat ramp infrastructure, and the established income stream from access fees, what began as an infuriating trespass has ironically increased my property's worth significantly. Mike and I sometimes fish together off my dock, away from the boat traffic. During one such evening, as we watched the sunset over the lake, he asked the question I'd been waiting for someone to ask. "Looking back, are you glad they built that boat ramp on your land?" I thought about it for a moment, watching a family return their pontoon boat to the trailer as the day ended. "I'm glad it worked out the way it did," I finally answered. "But I would have appreciated being asked first." He nodded, understanding the distinction. "For what it's worth, the new board has a strict policy now about verifying property lines before doing anything. Your situation is used as the cautionary tale at every planning meeting." I laughed at that. Well, at least some good came from it. As the stars began to appear over Lake Murray, I reflected on the strange journey of the past 3 years. What had started as a blatant trespass had transformed into an unusual partnership. The boat ramp that was built to serve the community now served both them and me, just not in the way Tammy Larson and her board had intended. Life on the lake settled into a pleasant rhythm. Weekends brought the steady hum of boats and the laughter of families enjoying the water. Weekdays were quieter, with just the occasional retiree launching a fishing boat in the peaceful morning hours. I came to appreciate the pattern, the predictable ebb and flow of activity that marked the seasons on Lake Murray. The following spring brought an unexpected development. The property adjacent to mine on the other side, a 15-acre parcel that had been on the market for years, was finally purchased by a developer. Signs appeared announcing the future site of Murray Shores, a new luxury community of 30 lakefront homes. I watched with interest as the clearing began, remembering all too well how Osprey Cove had started. This time, however, the developer, a company called Lakeside Partners, took a different approach. Their project manager, Dan Whitfield, came to my door one afternoon. "Mr. Vance," he said, extending his hand. "I wanted to introduce myself and talk about our development plans." "Learning from Osprey Cove's mistakes?" I asked with a wry smile. He laughed. "Word gets around. Yes, we're very careful about respecting property lines." "Actually, I'm here because we're interested in potentially partnering with you." Dan explained that rather than building their own boat ramp, Lakeside Partners wanted to discuss an arrangement to allow their future residents access to the existing one. They were prepared to pay for improvements, including a wider launch area and expanded parking. "We'd rather work with what's already established than create redundant facilities," he explained. "Plus, our market research shows that shared amenities actually build stronger communities." It was refreshing to deal with someone who understood the value of asking permission. Over the next few months, I worked with both HOAs to develop an expanded access agreement. Murray Shores would contribute to a substantial upgrade of the facilities, Osprey Cove would maintain its existing access rights, and I would continue to manage the system with a modified fee structure. The new arrangement benefited everyone. The improved boat ramp could handle larger vessels. The expanded parking solved congestion issues during peak times, and my income from access fees increased with the additional users. Most importantly, the agreement explicitly acknowledged my property rights while formalizing the easements in a way that protected all parties. During the renovation work, the construction crew discovered something interesting. The original boat ramp had been improperly built. The concrete had been poured too thin, and erosion was already beginning to undermine the structure. Had nothing been done, it likely would have begun crumbling within another year or two. "Tammy's rush job," Mike commented when I showed him the engineer's report. "She was so determined to get it built before anyone could stop her that she cut corners on the construction." The irony wasn't lost on me. Had the HOA approached me properly from the beginning, we could have built a proper facility the first time. Their attempt to save money by taking what wasn't theirs had ultimately cost them far more. The new residents of Murray Shores integrated smoothly into the lake community. Unlike the initial hostility I'd faced from many Osprey Cove residents, these newcomers understood from day one that they were using my property with permission. Many made a point of introducing themselves when they registered for access, and some even brought housewarming gifts when they learned I had recently completed my home. Last fall, both HOAs approached me with an unexpected proposal. They wanted to create a small community park on a portion of my property adjacent to the boat ramp. a place where residents could picnic while waiting for boats or enjoy the sunset over the water. They offered fair compensation for the additional easement and committed to maintaining the area themselves. After careful consideration and consultation with Trevor, I agreed. The park would be named Vance Point, a small but meaningful acknowledgement of whose land made their water access possible. The dedication ceremony was attended by residents from both communities, with Mike Daniels giving a speech about cooperation and respect between neighbors. As I stood there listening, I caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd. Marcus Reed, the original developer of Osprey Cove, was hanging back near the parking area. After the ceremony, he approached me hesitantly. "Mr. Vance," he began, clearly uncomfortable. I wanted to apologize for my role in how things started. I received some terrible advice from our legal team at the time, and I should have done more due diligence. I appreciated his candor, even if it was years late. "What happened to Tammy?" I asked, curious about the former HOA president who had caused so much trouble. Marcus grimaced. "Last I heard, she was sued by her new HOA in Charleston for serving on the board while violating multiple covenants herself. Apparently, she installed an unapproved fence and refused to remove it." I couldn't help but laugh. "Some people never change." "No," he agreed, "but communities can. What you've created here, this partnership between different developments, it's actually become a selling point for both communities." He was right. The shared boat facility had evolved into a focal point that brought neighbors together rather than driving them apart. Real estate listings for both Osprey Cove and Murray Shores now prominently featured the exclusive boat ramp access as a premium amenity. This spring marked the 3rd anniversary of the settlement agreement. To celebrate, the joint HOA committee organized a lakeside barbecue at Vance Point Park. Families from both communities mingled together, children played on the new playground equipment, and a steady stream of boats came and went from the ramp. Standing at my grill, cooking hamburgers for the crowd, I reflected on the strange journey. What had begun with trespassing and conflict had transformed into something valuable for everyone involved. The boat ramp that was built without my permission now operated with my blessing and to my benefit. Mike joined me at the grill, offering me a cold beer. "You know what Tammy would think if she could see this?" he asked, gesturing to the gathering. "She'd be furious that everyone's having a good time without her being in charge," I guessed. "Exactly." Mike raised his bottle in a toast. "To boat ramps built on shaky foundations but standing strong anyway." I clinked my bottle against his. "And to neighbors who became friends despite rough beginnings." As the sun began to set over Lake Murray, casting golden light across the water, I watched boats returning to the ramp after a day on the lake. Families worked together to load vessels onto trailers, children compared fishing stories, and neighbors helped neighbors with the sometimes tricky task of docking in the evening breeze. My gate still stood at the entrance to my property, but it had become a symbol of fair access rather than exclusion. The digital keypad that had once been a source of controversy now served as a simple utility, as ordinary as a light switch. The road that led to the boat ramp was still mine, but I had chosen to share it on my terms. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had simply given in to Tammy's demands from the beginning. Would I have the beautiful home I now enjoyed? Would I have the additional income that helped fund my early retirement? Would I have made the friends I now valued in both communities? Probably not. Sometimes principles are worth fighting for, not just because they're right, but because standing your ground can lead to better outcomes than surrender. As night fell over the lake, the party wound down. Residents packed up their coolers and folding chairs, children were corralled into cars, and the park lights came on automatically. Mike and the other HOA board members stayed behind to ensure everything was cleaned up properly. Same time next year. Mike asked as he helped me fold up the last table. "Absolutely," I replied. My gate's always open for those with the right code, he laughed, understanding the significance of that statement. In the end, that's what it had all been about, not keeping people out, but ensuring they entered with proper respect for whose property they were on. As I walked back up to my house that evening, I paused to look back at the boat ramp, now quietly awaiting the next day's activities. The concrete gleamed dully in the security lights, the floating dock rocked gently in the light breeze, and my gate stood open after the last guest had departed. 3 years ago, I had been outraged to find strangers building on my land without permission. Today, I was glad they had, though not for the reasons they intended. Sometimes life's greatest victories come not from getting exactly what you want, but from finding value in what you initially opposed. The boat ramp built without permission had become the centerpiece of an unexpected community. The gate I installed in defiance had become the foundation of a fair arrangement. And the land I had once guarded jealously had become more valuable through selective sharing than it ever would have been in isolation. As I reached my front porch and looked out over the moonlit lake, I smiled. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success, it's finding a way to succeed that no one else anticipated. Tammy Larson had wanted to take something from me. Instead, she had inadvertently given me something far more valuable. Not just a boat ramp, but a community, an income stream, and a story that would be told around Lake Murray for years to come. And every time someone entered the gate code and paid their access fee, I was reminded that sometimes standing your ground isn't just about principle, it's good business too.